Welcome to Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm your host, Jonathan, aka Three Piece Combo. On my left, you have the fight genius, Alf Artiaga. How you doing, my friend?
Great. New year, huh? New year,
New
more
year.
fights.
New year, more fights. Biggest year for the sport, I believe. Before we move on to the UFC stuff, I want to talk a little bit about what happened the day after New Year's started over in 2021. We had Ryan Garcia get that first really big win in his career, and he really showed we wanted to see. He came out, he fought a little bit of adversity. We all questioned how he would face, how he would be and react when he would have that adversity, and he came out and he fought really well. How do you think he did in his performance?
I thought it was as impressive as you can be considering the circumstances. And we got to face it, to get off the canvas, and it looked bad, and against a really good opponent, against an opponent that everybody had essentially told him this is your last chance at some gold down the line. Yeah, it has to be, in my opinion, the most important and the most impressive performance in the entire division since Teofimo defeated Loma.
Yeah, he came out, he did his thing, he got knocked down, and he popped right back up, and that was the biggest question, was how he was gonna come in, and once he gets hit by a real somebody who can actually punch, how he's gonna come back, and he came back and he delivered that beautiful body shot, and we were texting during that event, and you told me that that body shot was gonna be over him, and that's the money shot, and boy, he delivered. He hit that body shot, and he put him down, and that was the end of that, and man, that body shot was great, and it was just such a great thing to start off the new year with such a good fight. Now, moving on to the UFC, this is the first time they're going to be on ABC. This is such a big step for the sport. How big of a deal do you feel like this is for the UFC?
Well, it's a throwback. It's a throwback to maybe almost 40 years ago when it was common for, I don't know if you've ever seen those old commercials where they show wide world of sports, the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat, and they show the guy, the skier that goes and he does like a flip, and he essentially breaks his legs in the Olympics, and they show some boxing. Well, the boxing that they showed was what used to be Saturday afternoon fights. They used to have guys defend their titles on Saturday afternoon. If somebody can probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Ray Mancini defended his title against Dun Dun Kim, who he actually killed in the ring, on a Saturday afternoon. I know for a fact that well, it's been 40 years, so I don't know if it's too soon or not, but yeah, Ray Mancini actually killed the guy in the ring on a Saturday afternoon in prime time. But I know for a fact Marvin Hagler defended his title a couple of times, the middleweight title, on Saturday afternoons. So if this is a throwback, it's a welcome throwback, and I'm here for it. It's not for me. It's just not for me. I'm too used to. I like to settle in at 10 o'clock. Okay, and I don't mind if it goes deep and if it goes long. If it goes to 1 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes it can get ridiculous. Like there was a card not too long ago, boxing card. I forget which one it was. I believe it was could have been the Kell Brook fight, the Terrence Crawford fight. That the main event came to the ring at 12:45 or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, like that's a little bit ridiculous. Okay, but I'm for pay-per-view starting at 10. Like that's what I want to see. An afternoon card, not for me.
Yeah, it's a little bit early, but I think just with the platform that they have with the UFC, that's probably what they can get right now. You know what I mean? It might take a little bit of time until they get to that prime time 8 o'clock spot. And they're also in Abu Dhabi, so you got to remember they're trying to appease those fans over there. They have the 2,000 fans they're allowing to come in the arena, and what a better guy for it to happen to than Max Holloway. He's such a great ambassador for his sport, in and out of the ring, such a good person, such a good father overall. Now, getting into this fight, he has a big challenge ahead of him in Calvin Kattar. He's won a couple in a row. He's had great fights. He always delivers when he comes to the ring, and he's part of that Boston cartel that's coming out and really securing some wins and working their way up into the higher ranks of the division. Now, getting into the fight between Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar, who do you think is a better striker?
Well, I'm a huge Max Holloway fan, but and let's be real about this. He has two losses against Volkanovski. He's great, but his last loss, was it really a loss? Like that, you could have flipped a coin and you could have given that fight to Holloway. In my opinion, Max Holloway won that fight. Okay, I believe he did lose the first one to Volkanovski. Max Holloway, in my opinion, is one of the greatest of all time, maybe the best featherweight of all time. So I would tend to side with Max Holloway almost in any instance in this matchup.
Yeah, Max is somebody that you know will come out there and he'll pick you apart. And he gets better as the fight goes on. And that's kind of what we just didn't see in the last fight, which made that those couple of fights so shaky, is that at the end of the round, the fourth round and the fifth round, it seemed like he got shaky because he felt like he was up in the fight. So instead of pressuring and doing what Max normally does, he kind of just sat back and he accepted the pace that Volkanovski was setting, and he wasn't fighting his fight for those later in that round. So I do agree with you. I do think Max is a better striker, but I think we need to see the Max that fought like Aldo, the Max that fought, Brian Ortega, the guy that got that. I agree with David. I don't think he lost that fight either. Um, fight those fights, because that's on those fights. The longer those fights went, the better he got, and that's kind of what he
Yeah.
does. He gets his timing early. He feels out early. He gets his range early, and then once he gets that, he'll work that jab. He'll work that hook, and he'll do it with volume. He's not really a one punch kind of guy, but he'll do it with volume where he'll pour it on you. Now, Max is coming in. He's coming in off of two losses. Do you think Max Holloway is entering the back part of his career, or do you think he's still the top dog in the featherweight division?
I still think he's the top dog in the featherweight division, and the reason I say that is because I believe, in my heart of hearts, I really do believe that he avenged his loss. He just didn't get the benefit of the doubt on the cards. So, he hasn't been embarrassed. This is not, how should I say, this is not a Tony Ferguson situation where you can see the end. I do believe that Max Holloway still has another run here. I do believe, I also believe that this is really stiff competition that they're giving him for this main event. It's not a pushover. It's not a showcase. Okay, this is not going to be easy for Max Holloway, and I wouldn't touch it. And I look at the odds, and I was thinking about, you know what, maybe I could get a pretty decent price on Max Holloway, and I could put something down -60 against +140. I just wouldn't touch the fight to actually bet it.
I mean, I think that's a bettable fight because I think Max Holloway's being a little underrated in that fight. A lot of bettors, what they do is they kind of use the last couple of fights as as kind of like how he's going to project it to be in his next fight. And just because he lost, quote unquote, lost those two fights, I don't think that he's getting enough respect in this. I think he should be like a plus or a -2 underdog or something like that. And
Hmm.
I think this is a really bettable fight because I think with the reach advantage, the 42-40, and then the height advantage that he has on him, I think he's going to be able to pick him apart. I think his footwork is a little bit better. I think he's a little bit better at moving around the octagon, just controlling the ring. And this is a fight where I can see him start a little bit slow in that first round, see him start to pick it up in that second round, and by the time that third and that fourth round comes, it's going to be bloody. It's going to be very, very bloody. And I think it's a great fight for ABC to kick off because this is going to be such a war. I don't see these guys really just giving up towards any part of this. And Kattar wants to be the first guy to finish Max. And like what David said, one of our commenters, Max absorbed the most strikes without being knocked down yet, and that's so true. But we don't know if that chin will be suspect because he has absorbed that many shots. So what if one of those new shots or maybe something stronger puts him down? That might be something that could happen, being that he's been fighting for so long, even though he's such a young age. But I think Max Holloway has the advantage in this fight. But getting onto his opponent, Calvin Kattar, he's like you said, not a pushover at all. How do you think he has to come out and win this fight?
I think he's going to have to go for broke because I think he can't fight what usually has gotten it done for him before against Max Holloway and expect to win. So he's just going to have to be extremely aggressive. He's going to have to pressure, and I'm not going to say that he has to do a Volkanovski impersonation, but he is going to have to fight cagey. He's going to have to fight small so he could get under some of those punches and get into Max Holloway's chest and try to rough up the fight, try to make it a little dirty. So yeah, it's a tough it's a pretty tough challenge for Calvin Kattar, but he does have a path, I believe, to win this fight.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely has a path, and with the streak that he's on right now, and how he's getting better and better, this is only something that he can use to propel himself moving forward. Now, who are you taking this fight? Are you taking Calvin Kidd or are you taking Max Holloway?
No, I think Max Holloway returns to the limelight and to the top of the featherweight division, and I think all of a sudden he'll be in all those conversations, at featherweight and above even. So I believe this is. I'm not going to call it a showcase, but it's a reintroduction to the MMA fan of Max Holloway.
Yeah, I agree. I think Max comes out, he gets the dub, and he puts a stamp on it and shows that he is the greatest featherweight of all time. Now, moving into the co-main, we have a couple of UFC veterans. We got Carlos Condit coming in, long career, has had many fights, taking on another UFC veteran in Matt the Immortal Brown. Now, both guys obviously on the back end of their careers. Condit's 1-5 in his last six, and Brown's not on the hot streak himself. So, how do you see this fight coming out and happening?
I really have zero idea. When I saw that this was the co-main event, I had to check. I had to check my watch on the date. Uh, Huge fan of both guys. Okay, you gotta really believe that Carlos Condit has had the better career. Matt Brown has always gotten right to the precipice of doing something and then hasn't. So as far as who I would take, I would have to take Carlos Condit. I think he's the more accomplished fighter. I think he wants to make one last run at it. But let's be real about this. This both guys are, I wouldn't say coming in limping, but it's easily the twilight. It's like the end is near. You can see it. It's almost right there, and to the point where I believe the loser is probably retiring.
Yeah, I can see either of these guys retiring after whoever loses this fight. But I'd have to agree with you. I think Carlos Condit is going to murder Matt Brown. I think he's looked a little more fresh. He's had a couple of injuries since fighting Robbie Lawler, and he's really been struggling while having those injuries in the octagon. And you could tell that was hampering him. And in his last fight, I feel like he was finally able to have a fight where he looked fully healthy. And I think that's something that's really important for Condit is that he comes out and then he does fight healthy. And if he doesn't, then we could see that this is it because Matt Brown's 40 right now, and you can see it in his face and his interviews. He shows his age, and being a little bit younger at 36, I think Condit can come in, and I can really think he can get this fight done as well. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have a sleeper contender in the welterweight division. He's been out for a little while because of injuries and then infections as well that happened outside the UFC. Santiago Ponzinibbio is making his return after I think 2018 or early 2019 after his long layoff. How do you think he's going to come back and look coming in?
Well, it's a 25-month layoff. Let me see, 26-month layoff. It'll be to the day 26 months. So yeah, all you got to do is you got to remember what he used to look like and his resume that he built up to this point. You got to think that he's been pretty active the last year, getting off of rehab and getting back into fighting shape. So this should be a show, and I would expect. And it's happened before. We've seen guys come off of long layoffs in the UFC in recent days, in recent months, and put in good performances. So there's no reason to think that he's washed up or it's over for him. It should be an entertaining fight because we're gonna get to see, I think, the best of him going forward.
Yeah, I think something that's kind of underrated is that his body got a little bit of time to rest. You know what I mean? And sometimes it does suck because you're wasting some of the prime of your career, but that your body getting to rest and getting to fully heal from everything, that's super important as well. And he's 34 right now, so there is maybe 2 or 2.5 years left that he can really go and try to make a push for the belt. But I think he's not done yet. I think he's going to come in. He's facing a really tough opponent in Li Jingliang, and a guy that's doesn't want to go down. He gets hit and he'll continue to stay up. And I think this will be a fight where we see Santiago just come and put on a masterclass when it comes to striking. I think he's going to pick him apart, and I think he's going to remind the world, hey, I'm a contender in the UFC division. Like, I beat Mike Perry, I beat Neil Magny, I beat some of these top guys that are contenders right now, way before. You know what I mean? So now he can come in and reestablish himself to make himself known in the welterweight division. Now we got the guy who delivered the best knockout of 2020, Joaquin Buckley, coming back in, and he's taking a pretty good fighter in Alessio De Chirico. How do you feel that fight's going to go down? Do you feel like this is something that's going to set Buckley up for more stardom moving into 2021, or do you feel like this is something that's going to pull him back down, kind of like Kevin
I think
Holland
he
did?
has. I think he has some pressure here because this is a guy. This is a guy that doesn't necessarily well, he may take some punishment, but he doesn't get overwhelmed ever. Like it's been a while since he's actually been defeated soundly by anybody. So he's always competitive. He's always strong, but he has lost his last three fights. He's lost them by decision. He was inactive in a couple of those fights. You could say that he was a little bit, I would say, not a willing participant or not a willing, not willing to engage. Let's
Yeah,
say,
one hundred
okay.
percent.
So if Joaquin Buckley can actually, press the pace, he could look really, really impressive. And if he could get a knockout, that's going to get everybody talking because, like I just said, the Shiriko is not a guy that you really overwhelm because he's never really been overwhelmed in the octagon. So it's a showcase, I believe. I don't see how the Chirico can win, but Joaquin Buckley, there is some pressure. You have to look good against this guy, a guy that doesn't let you look good. So I think it's a really interesting fight.
Yeah, the Kiriko is really a hard puzzle to figure out because if you watch his couple of fights, his opponents are always very timid with him because he has his nasty body shots, he has these really good hooks, and he's a fighter that's dangerous when you engage with him. So it makes you not want to engage with him as much because he has those mean shots. But I think for Buckley, I think with all the fame that's coming on, I think he's handled it pretty well. You know what I mean? That first fight after that big knockout, he came and he delivered another knockout. So I think this is something that he can ride with, and I think he can start 2021 really just making a name for himself and continue to build on that resume that he has moving forward. Now, for the opener for this card, we got two undefeated guys taking on each other. We have Dushko Todorovic taking on Punahele Soriano. Who do you think gets that first loss tonight when they fight?
Wow, it's a rough one, right? So the guy who I've seen fight more, Todorovic, I'm gonna side with him. I like his kicks. I like how he stands tall. I like how he fights tall. So it's a rough one. Like I wouldn't bet a dime on it because there's just so much unknown right here. But yeah, I would take Todorovic. Let's call it a decision.
Yeah, I mean, I have a hard time seeing him win a decision because I just feel like his hands are so great. And this is one of those fights where I would probably stay away from this one, betting it, because Todorovic isn't really well. He doesn't move his body well, but he likes to move his head a lot and leave his hands down, which is a recipe for disaster because all it takes is one. And with Soriano, his last win came by a knockout with just one punch. So he has that one punch power. So this is a fight that could really end in the first or second round. We did see Todorovic just brutalize Townsend in his last fight. I think that was a fight that Townsend lost his brother a couple of weeks before that fought, and he just brutalized Townsend. And the ref gave him as much chance as he can to let him fight back, and Todorovic just overpowered him, and he hit him with some nasty, nasty shots. So I'm agree with you on that one. I think Todorovic is coming in. He's a little bit of a better striker. He's a little more diverse, and I think this is a guy that can really work his way up in the middleweight division if he continues on this strike. So I think Soriano does have the one punch power, but I think Dushko gets it done. Now moving on to the prelims, we got a couple of fun fights coming in. Quick picks just going out. We have Phil Hawes, who won his UFC debut in 18 seconds, taking on Nasruddin Imavov. Who do you think wins that fight?
Yeah, this is a squash match, and I guess this is something they're going to start doing on the prelims. The main event of the prelims is now going to be essentially showcases. So, yeah, I don't see how he doesn't look good. I think it's set up for him. I think I like his opponent for him. So, yeah, Phil Hawes continues to impress. I'm actually surprised by the low odds on Philip Hawes.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's a much better fighter than the odds makers are giving him for. And getting into another heavyweight clash, moving on to the big boys, we have Justin Badman Tafa taking on Carlos Boy Felipe. Now, Tafa's coming in. He won his last one by knockout. One before that, he's the one who got knocked out. And Carlos Felipe, all of his finishes came in round one. Two big heavyweights. One of those guys are going to come out on top. Which one do you think is going to be?
I'll take the odds, and I'll say that Carlos Felipe gets him out of there in the first round. So, I don't have much of an opinion on this fight. I saw Carlos Felipe fight before. So I'll take Carlos Felipe. Wild right hand finds a mark.
Yeah, and I think Justin Tafa is going to get that one. I think he comes from a fighting family. I think his uncle was a light heavyweight boxer, and he just comes with a really good line. And he lost his first fight so brutally, but he was still really young. You know what I mean? He only had 5 fights on his record before he fought that first one. So I think he comes in and I think he gets a little bit better. Now, moving on to next week, man, we got a couple of good fights coming up. In the middle of the week, we have Neil Magny taking on Michael Chiesa. And then Saturday, we have the big main event, Conor McGregor versus Dustin Poirier. How do you feel about those fights coming up?
I can't wait to talk about them, and we will. I guess next week on Fight Week on Five, it's going to be fun. I think they're all competitive. They're all going to be fun. I think we all have our rooting interest in that Connor Poirier fight. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun next week.
Yeah, I think they're going to deliver. I think the UFC is going to have a really, really big week. I think it's awesome that they're starting off on ABC and having that the beginning of that relationship because imagine how far they've come. You know, from Mitt Romney in 1996 telling all the governors don't do this show to almost going bankrupt in '05 and having the Ultimate Fighter just save it because of the deal on Spike and that fight with Stephen Bonner and the other dude, but they come so far to be able to make it on live TV, and I think this is huge for the sport of MMA. It's huge for the UFC, and it's only going to keep getting bigger. You know, we have some good fights coming up. We have
Mhm.
Connor and Dustin. We got the next month. We have what's his name, Gilbert Burns taking on Usman. That's going to be a big fight as well.
Mhm.
And then we have uh, Adesanya taking on John Blachowicz, trying to become a double champ. So this year is starting off really, really strong. We're going to keep you locked in every single week here on Fight Week on 5. We got a lot of boxing cards coming up too. And we hope you guys have a great week. And we'll hope you guys have watch a good fight. Thanks for watching Fight Week on 5, brought to you by the 5 Reasons Sports Network. I'm Jonathan. We got Alpha Altiago over there. Hope you guys have a good one.
Talk to you guys next.